And welcome back. Urban Resource Institute is an organization committed to a world free of domestic violence, homelessness, poverty, and trauma, where communities are safe, stable, and thriving. The organization's programs impact more than 40,000 individuals annually through prevention, intervention, education, and direct services in both residential and non-residential settings. Joining me now is the Senior Vice President of Domestic Violence, Residential, and Legal Programs at Urban Resource Institute, Jennifer White-Reid. And Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Daren.
I gave a little bit of an intro as to your organization, but you can do a little better job. So tell us a little bit more about the work that you do.
Absolutely. I'm privileged to be part of the Urban Resource Institute. We have been around providing services in the community for a little over 40 years. And as you noted, we specialize in working with the community that impacted by victims of domestic violence and impacted by homelessness. You know, we really create programs that look at barriers to seeking safety, and really look at ways to help folks improve their lives. We are the largest provider of domestic violence shelter services in the country. We operate 14 domestic violence shelters, and on any given night, we can support 1,500 adults and children with their pets.
And when we talk about supporting children with pets, domestic violence is huge, and I know that having pets as a part of domestic violence is something that you work with. Can you give us a little bit of a correlation between the two?
Absolutely. I would say in about 2013, a little less than 10 years ago, we launched our People and Animals Living Safely program, PALS. At that time, we started to see the research that up to 50% of victims of domestic violence who were pet owners would not leave a dangerous situation because they could not take their pet with them. And at that time, very few domestic violence shelters allowed families to come in with their pets. So we created an innovative model that really thought about the entire family. This is a program that is trauma-informed, client-centered. We recognize that about 67% of American households have at least one pet. Pets are part of the family. They are our confidants. They are our supporters. They are our comforters during times of stress. And you can only imagine that when someone is experiencing domestic violence and they're thinking about leaving, that they don't want to leave anyone behind, and that includes their beloved pet. So we started our PALS program, and at this point, we now have 9 shelters out of our 14 sites that are pet friendly.
Amazing. And what difference have you noticed in having a pet friendly shelter?
Absolutely. We have recognized that it has opened the doors and reduced that barrier. So victims of domestic violence who may not have wanted to leave a dangerous situation because they did not think they could take their pet, they could now take their pet. We noticed that when families are together, they are healing and thriving and building a new life together with their pet. They are exercising together. They are really looking at their health together. We have a partnership with local vets and the ASPCA to make sure that not only the adults get medical care, but the pets get medical care. We also recognize that our clients appreciate that we see their pets as important. It really validates what's important to them. And so we like to build programs around individualized services, sort of what is meaningful to you. And we hope that, you know, other programs and other agencies across the city, state, and the nation will replicate our model.
So before this, right, you've implemented this program. Before this, how were you managing and what were you noticing as some of the barriers or challenges?
Yeah, and you know, sometimes it's an adult who has a pet and sometimes it's a child. So we heard stories from our childcare staff that our kids were mourning the loss of a pet. There's also statistics that show that abusive partners use pets to threaten and manipulate victims of domestic violence. So we've heard graphic stories of, you know, a perpetrator threatening to put a cat in a microwave and turn the microwave on if the victim didn't come home at a certain time. We have heard stories of pets not being fed, pets being placed in the closet, physically abused. And so these are serious, really serious situations that make victims of domestic violence think, I can't leave, I can't leave without my pet. And so certainly being able to open the doors to the entire family increases safety for everybody.
When we look at where we are right now, I mean, obviously this new center is here and it's obviously an advantage to a lot of people. Talk to us about what you're hearing now that you have this opportunity to have a pet-friendly place for victims of domestic violence. Are the residents excited, or how do they feel? Do they notice, I should say, even the shift?
So for your views, we are just delighted that we opened our new domestic violence shelter that is pet friendly in Queens. It is the very first pet friendly domestic violence shelter in Queens. And our clients have expressed such gratefulness to be able to come to this site with their pets. We have partnered with Banfield Foundation, which is so incredibly important because this partnership demonstrates that our clients' connections to their pets is important, that it's meaningful, that there's value there. It is a life-saving program. So Banfield Foundation has generously provided financial support to help us build a pet park in our backyard. It will create a engaging space for our kids and adults and pets to be able to exercise together. There will be a beautiful, colorful mural that is soothing and comforting. There will be agility equipment and supplies, and just really a wonderful recreation space for the families to be together.
And you did mention the Banfield Foundation really helping you for an outdoor park, and talk to us about what that really means to have them as a partner in making making that happen.
Like I said, you can when you connect with the private sector and they recognize the importance of this work, the importance of having a deep impact in the lives of domestic violence victims, it's incredible. And so this highlights the value of relationships that human-animal bond. You certainly think about catastrophes that you've seen on television where there's Superstorm Sandy or Hurricane Katrina, where you see people holding on to their animals. And so this partnership is invaluable because we know that we'll be able to continue to do this work and help our clients really rebuild their lives and thrive and be healthy and address some of the trauma that they've experienced from being in abusive situations.
And having a residential program obviously is a great blessing to a lot of people who are really dealing with domestic violence. I know that we talked about pets and how it plays a role, but can you give us an idea a little bit? Because I think you talked about it just a little while ago, that sometimes when you have these victims who are experiencing domestic violence in such a tragic way, really getting them to safety requires the bringing along of a pet. And if a pet can't come, and I'll give you an example just for for fire purposes. I remember a fire, and some people would not want to be rescued or go through the full necessary things for a rescue because they didn't want to leave their pets behind. And sometimes when it comes to domestic violence, I know that also can sometimes be the case.
We've had some survivors share that they have lived in their cars. They have gone couch to couch with their cat or their dog in unsafe situations because there were no shelters that allowed the pet to come in. So nationally, the statistics are about 3% to 5% of domestic violence shelters have some type of co-sheltering program where the pet is included. Sometimes it's a program where the pet is located in a kennel attached to the shelter, could be outside, could be in the basement. And other programs are similar to ours, which is the co-living model, where families get to live together with their pet, right? So that they can see each other every single day, they can nurture each other every single day. But Absolutely. Pets are part of the family. Sometimes they intervene and they protect victims of domestic violence during incidents. And Americans in particular tend to have pets. And, we saw an increase in pet ownership over the last couple of years due to the pandemic. So certainly we know that the domestic violence numbers are staggering. Every year the New York City Domestic Violence Hotline answers anywhere between 100,000 to 110,000 phone calls from victims of domestic violence. So you have a significant number of survivors and then significant number of pet owners. So you know that if there isn't a safe place for them to go as a family, adults, children, and pets, someone may stay in an unsafe situation.
So give me a little walkthrough here when we talk about domestic violence. We know that a lot of the numbers are staggering, the numbers continue to rise. What are you seeing in terms of since COVID? Because since COVID, a lot of people had to domesticate and be around people that sometimes they necessarily didn't want to be
Mhm.
around. Work was an escape, school was an escape, all of that, but no longer when COVID hit. What were you seeing? Were you seeing an increase in numbers?
We absolutely saw a spike in domestic violence as a result of the pandemic, right? So people were not going to the office, so they were staying home and in close quarters. There were individuals who, may have in the past gotten on the phone to call a hotline. At this point, you couldn't because there weren't those private spaces to be able to seek help. We've heard stories of people who, waited all day for the perpetrator to leave, to go to the corner store, to sort of negotiate and figure out how she could leave the environment. We also had survivors who did not know what it was like to be in shelter. It is often a mystery to come into shelter. And there's a misconception that domestic violence shelters are, spaces with large rooms and cots. It's not like that. We definitely at Urban Resource Institute develop programs that are apartment buildings where our families have their own apartment. They have kitchen facilities, private bathroom facilities. We offer supplies recognizing that survivors will flee and leave most of their personal belongings behind. And so we always have a welcome kit for both the humans and the pets. And so we saw a significant spike in phone calls across the city, but we also had to engage in a couple of awareness campaigns because we wanted people to recognize that despite the pandemic, our doors were still open. Where a lot of folks were really scared and didn't know what to do, and maybe majority of staff were working from home. In our community, our work, we're all frontline workers. Our domestic violence shelters were always open. Our staff came to work every single day. We had day shifts and evening shifts and overnight shifts. So we went out of our way to make sure that, including conversations with media, about making sure that people knew that our doors were open and they remain open.
And for you right now, obviously, the doors being open is a great thing because now you have people who have the opportunity to say, listen, if I'm in trouble, I can get out, I can get to you. And that's a great thing. But on the other side, there's so many others that don't make it out, right? What encouragement can you give to people about, because shelters come with a stigmatism sometimes.
Mhm.
What encouragement would you give to people, or advice would you give to people when it comes to even thinking about this? Because
Mhm.
sometimes the biggest stop is, I don't want to live in that shelter, but
Mhm.
there's so much more to a shelter than I think people imagine.
Absolutely. And the most important thing is for everyone to understand that it's a personal decision for someone to make. We don't tell people that they have to leave. They have to really think about what's best for them. Sometimes getting an order of protection only makes the situation more difficult. So it's an individualized assessment. And so for those who are ready and able to leave an environment, we like to talk about building a safety plan. So whether you're building a plan to leave in 30 days or 60 days, think about your environment, think about, if you have access to a little bit of cash, where can you save those things? Where can you put your keys and your personal documentation, your social security card, copies of your birth certificates, if you have children, copies of your children's documentation, your passport? How can you plan if ultimately you know that this relationship is not a safe one and that you ultimately want to transition, but you're not sure how and when? What we'd love for you to think about, and you can talk to case managers, you can talk to hotline workers, is building that safety plan that you and you alone will execute when you are ready.
Yeah. Jennifer, before we leave, I want you to give an opportunity. I want to give you an opportunity to tell people how they can get in touch if they're really interested or they know somebody that needs this assistance.
So to your audience, if you are a victim of domestic violence or you know someone, you can reach out to Urban Resource Institute, URI, by reaching out to our website, which is urinyc.org. We have a host of information, materials that you can read through, including safety planning materials. You can also contact the New York City Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-621-HOPE. To be assessed for safety and to be placed in a shelter, including a domestic violence shelter that would accommodate the needs of your entire family, including a pet.
Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us, and certainly thank you for the work that you're doing to helping families and victims who really need this much needed assistance. Thank you so much.
And thank you again for including me in this really important conversation.
Definitely important conversation. Thanks much.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
All righty.